The 12 ships of the Zephyrian exploration fleet drifted slowly through the dark, empty space. Each ship was as big as a small city and glowed with soft blue lights along their smooth surfaces. Inside the largest ship, Fleet Commander Veltar stared at the broken screens in front of her with growing worry. "Still nothing," said her chief navigator, Kexan, as he tapped the dark console with his long purple fingers. "The quantum positioning system is completely dead." Veltar's 4 eyes blinked in frustration. Her tall, thin body swayed slightly as she moved around the bridge. Like all Zephyrians, she had pale purple skin that seemed to shimmer under the ship's lights. Her people had been traveling between the stars for thousands of years, but this had never happened before. "How is this possible?" she asked. "Our navigation systems are the most advanced in the galaxy. They have never failed." Kexan looked at the other crew members on the bridge. Their faces showed the same confusion and fear that he felt. "The quantum storm we passed through 3 days ago was unlike anything in our records. It seems to have scrambled all our positioning arrays." Veltar walked to the large window that showed the endless stars outside. Somewhere out there was their home. Somewhere among those countless points of light were the worlds of the Zephyrian Collective. But without their navigation systems, those stars were just pretty lights with no meaning. "Send another distress signal," she ordered. "I have been sending them every hour," replied Communications Officer Yelmo. "But this region of space appears to be empty. No one has answered our calls." The Zephyrian exploration fleet had been on a routine mission to map new star systems at the edge of known space. They were supposed to be gone for 6 months and return home with data about new worlds and resources. Now they had been lost in the Nethys Expanse for 3 weeks. The Nethys Expanse was a vast region of space that few ships ever visited. It was known for strange energy fields and cosmic storms that could damage even the strongest ships. Most civilizations avoided it completely. The Zephyrians had only entered it because their advanced shields and navigation systems made them confident they could handle any problems. That confidence seemed foolish now. "Commander," said Chief Engineer Tolver as he entered the bridge. His usual calm expression was replaced with worry. "I need to speak with you about our situation." Veltar turned away from the window. "What is it?" "Our food processors are working fine, and we have enough water recycling capacity for several more months. But our power cells are draining faster than normal. The quantum storm damaged more than just our navigation systems." "How long do we have?" Veltar asked. Tolver hesitated. "If we reduce power to non-essential systems, maybe 2 months. If we can't find our way home by then." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone on the bridge knew what would happen. 12 ships with 3,000 Zephyrians would be trapped forever in the empty darkness of space. Veltar had commanded ships for over 50 years. She had led exploration missions to hundreds of new worlds. She had faced space pirates, dangerous storms, and equipment failures. But she had always been able to rely on their technology to find solutions. The Zephyrian Collective had built their entire civilization on the belief that advanced technology could solve any problem. Now that technology had failed them, and Veltar realized she had no idea what to do without it. "Have the other ship commanders reported any success with their navigation repairs?" she asked. "No, Commander," Kexan replied. "All 12 ships report the same problem. The quantum storm affected every vessel in exactly the same way." Veltar sat down in her command chair and closed her 4 eyes. She tried to think of solutions, but every idea required working navigation systems. The Zephyrians had been using quantum positioning technology for so long that they had forgotten how their ancestors found their way between the stars. "Commander," Yelmo called out suddenly, "I'm receiving a response to our distress signal." Every head on the bridge turned toward him. "Finally," Veltar said, standing up quickly. Which ship is it? Zephyrian? Kaldorian? Nexus Alliance? Yelmo frowned as he listened to the incoming message. That's strange. The signal is very weak, and the technology seems primitive. The ship appears to be much smaller than any of our vessels. Primitive? Voltar repeated. How primitive? Their communication system is using basic electromagnetic frequencies. Very old technology. And Commander. Yelmo paused, looking confused. They're asking if we need help. The bridge fell silent. In all their years of space travel, the Zephyrians had never encountered a species that offered help without first establishing trade agreements or diplomatic protocols. Most advanced civilizations were careful getting involved with other species' problems. What species are they? Veltar asked. They call themselves humans, Yelmo replied. I've never heard of them. They must be a very young spacefaring race. Veltar considered their options. Her people were lost and running out of time. Their advanced technology was useless. Their distress calls had been ignored by every major civilization in the region. Now, some unknown species with primitive technology was offering to help. She had two choices. Accept help from these humans, who probably couldn't do anything useful, or continue drifting through space until their power ran out. Send a response, Veltar decided. Tell them we accept their offer of assistance. Give them our position and ask them to approach slowly. As Yelmo sent the message, Veltar looked out at the stars again. She wondered what these humans looked like and what kind of help they could possibly offer. Their ship was small and their technology was old. How could they succeed where the advanced Zephyrian fleet had failed? Soon, she would find out. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the Terran Federation vessel, Wanderlust, and stared at the massive alien ships floating in the darkness ahead. Each one was at least 10 times bigger than her own ship, and seemed to glow with an inner light that made them look almost magical. Are you seeing this, Captain? Asked Lieutenant Rodriguez from the navigation station. Those ships are incredible. Look at the design, the size. We're looking at technology that's probably centuries ahead of ours. Sarah nodded slowly. The Wanderlust was a good ship, but compared to the alien vessels, it looked like a fishing boat next to a luxury cruise liner. The human ship was built for practical exploration work. It had thick armor plating, multiple backup systems, and repair tools for almost every situation. It wasn't beautiful like the alien ships, but it was tough and reliable. Communications. Do we have a translation system working? Sarah asked. Yes, Captain, replied Communications Officer Park. Their universal translator is amazing. It's learning our language as we speak. We can already understand most of what they're saying. Good. Let them know we're approaching slowly and that we're here to help. Sarah had been captain of the Wanderlust for 8 years. Her crew of 200 humans came from all over Earth and the other human colonies. They were engineers, scientists, doctors, and explorers who had signed up for long missions in deep space. Most of them had never seen an alien ship before, but they were handling the situation with typical human curiosity and excitement. Captain, said Chief Engineer Volkov over the communication system. I'm looking at the scans of those ships. The technology is incredible, but something's wrong. Their power systems are running poorly, and I'm not detecting any navigation signals. That matches their distress call, Sarah replied. They say they're lost and can't find their way home. Dr. James Wright, the ship's scientist, looked up from his instruments. Captain, how is it possible that ships this advanced could be lost? They should have navigation systems that make ours look like stone tools. Sarah had been wondering the same thing. The alien ships clearly came from a civilization that was far more advanced than humanity. Humans had only been traveling between stars for about 200 years. These aliens looked like they had been doing it for much longer. Let's find out, Sarah said. Open a channel to their command ship. The main screen flickered, and suddenly, they were looking at the bridge of the alien vessel. Sarah tried not to show her surprise at seeing the alien commander. The being was tall and thin with pale purple skin and 4 large eyes. Her movements were graceful and elegant, but her expression showed worry and frustration. I am Fleet Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian Exploration Fleet, the alien said. Her voice came through the translator as smooth and formal. You said you could help us. How? Sarah stood up straighter. She was meeting an alien for the first time in her life, but she tried to act like it was just another day at work. I'm Captain Sarah Chun of the Terran Federation ship Wanderlust. We received your distress signal. Can you tell me what happened? Veltar's 4 eyes seemed to study Sarah carefully. We passed through a quantum storm 3 weeks ago. It damaged our navigation systems. We cannot determine our position or find our way home. Navigation systems, Sarah repeated. What kind of navigation do you use? Quantum positioning arrays, Veltar replied, as if this should be obvious. They read the quantum signatures of known star systems and calculate our exact position anywhere in the galaxy. Sarah exchanged glances with her crew. That sounds very advanced. But what do you do if those systems fail? Veltar looked confused. They do not fail. This is the first time in 1,000 years that our navigation systems have not worked properly. But surely you have backup systems? Sarah asked. Manual navigation? Star charts? Manual navigation? Veltar repeated the words like they were in a foreign language. I do not understand. Our ships are guided by quantum computers. Why would we need manual systems? Sarah began to understand the problem. These aliens had become so dependent on their advanced technology that they had forgotten how to navigate without it. It would be like humans forgetting how to walk because they always rode in vehicles. Commander Veltar, Sarah said carefully, my people might be able to help you. We still use older navigation methods as backup systems. May I send some of my crew to your ship to examine the situation? Veltar hesitated. Sarah could see that the alien commander was struggling with the idea of accepting help from a species that appeared to be much less advanced than her own people. Captain Chun, Veltar said finally, I mean no disrespect, but your ship is small. Your technology appears to be quite primitive compared to ours. How could you possibly help us with problems our own engineers cannot solve? Sarah smiled. She had dealt with this kind of thinking before, even among other humans. Sometimes, Commander, the simplest solutions work best. We may not have your advanced technology, but we've learned to solve problems in other ways. What ways? Veltar asked. Well, for example, how do you think humans found their way across the oceans on Earth before we had satellites and computers? Veltar's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. I do not know. How? We looked at the stars, Sarah said simply. We learned to read the positions of stars and planets to figure out where we were and which way we needed to go. We still teach those methods to all our space crews. The alien commander stared at Sarah for a long moment. You navigate by looking at stars? Among other methods, yes. It's not as precise as your quantum systems, but it works. And it doesn't stop working when you hit a quantum storm. Sarah could see that Veltar was thinking hard about this. The alien commander looked at her own crew members, who seemed just as confused as she was. Captain Chun, Veltar said slowly, I find it difficult to believe that such primitive methods could help us. But we are running out of time and options. If you truly believe you can help, you are welcome to try. Thank you, Commander. I'll send over a team right away. As the communication ended, Sarah turned to her crew. Rodriguez, Volkov, Wright, you are with me. Park, you have the ship. "Captain," Dr. Wright said quietly, "are you sure about this? Their technology is so far beyond ours. What if we can't help them?" Sarah looked at the alien ships on the screen. "Then at least we'll have tried. But I have a feeling that sometimes old knowledge is just as valuable as new technology." She was about to find out if she was right. The shuttle carrying Sarah and her team docked with the massive Zephyrian command ship. As they walked through the alien corridors, the humans looked around in wonder. Everything was smooth and curved, with soft lights that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The technology was beautiful and clearly very advanced. Commander Veltar met them in a large room filled with dark screens and control panels. Several other Zephyrians stood nearby, watching the humans with curious expressions. Sarah noticed that all the aliens were tall and thin with the same purple skin and 4 eyes. "Welcome aboard," Veltar said politely. "I must admit, I am curious to see how you plan to help us." Lieutenant Rodriguez was already looking around the room with interest. He was the Wanderlust's chief navigator and had studied navigation methods from all over human history. "These are your navigation controls?" he asked. "Yes," replied Navigator Kexan. "Normally, they show us our exact position in the galaxy and plot courses to any destination. Now they show nothing." Rodriguez walked up to one of the dark screens and studied the controls. "How do they work when they're functioning?" The quantum sensors read the unique signatures of pulsars and other cosmic markers, Kexan explained. "The computer compares these signatures to our database and calculates our position. Then it plots the most efficient course through subspace." "Impressive," Rodriguez said. "But what if the sensors are damaged or the database is corrupted?" Kexan looked confused. "Then we would contact the collective for assistance." "And if you can't contact anyone?" That has never happened before." Dr. Wright was examining the ship's sensors with Chief Engineer Volkov. "Commander Veltar," he said, "your long-range sensors are still working perfectly. You can see the stars around us in great detail. The problem is just that your computer can't identify them." "Correct," Veltar confirmed. "But without identification, the stars are meaningless. We have no way to determine which direction leads home." Sarah stepped forward. "Actually, you do. Rodriguez, show them." Rodriguez smiled and walked to the large window that showed the star field outside. "May I borrow a portable computer or tablet?" One of the Zephyrian crew members handed him a small device. Rodriguez held it up toward the stars and began taking measurements. The aliens watched with growing confusion as he pointed the device at different stars and made notes. "What are you doing?" asked Kexan. "Taking stellar measurements," Rodriguez explained. "I'm measuring the apparent brightness and position of various stars. Then I'll use triangulation to estimate our position." "Triangulation?" Veltar repeated. "It's an ancient mathematical technique," Dr. Wright explained. "You measure the angles between known points to determine your position relative to them." Engineer Volkov was looking at the Zephyrian star charts that were still stored in their computer. "Do you have detailed maps of your home region? Stars, planets, major landmarks?" "Of course," said Chief Engineer Tolver. "Our databases contain detailed information about every system in collective space." "Good. Rodriguez, if we can identify just a few familiar star patterns, we should be able to figure out where we are." Rodriguez was still taking measurements. "The problem is that we're seeing these stars from a completely different angle than your charts show. We need to account for our changed perspective." Sarah watched as her crew worked. The Zephyrians seemed amazed that the humans were actually trying to solve the navigation problem without using any quantum technology. They whispered to each other in their own language, pointing at the humans and shaking their heads in disbelief. After an hour of work, Rodriguez called everyone over to a large table where he had spread out star charts and his handwritten calculations. "I think I've got something," he announced. "Commander Veltar, look at this star pattern here." He pointed to a group of bright stars visible through the window. Veltar and her crew gathered around the table. "Yes, I can see those stars." "What about them?" "Now look at this section of your star charts," Rodriguez continued, pointing to an area of the map. "If we account for the different viewing angle and distance, I believe this is the same star pattern." Kaksan studied the charts carefully. "What? How can you be certain?" "The angles are completely different." "That's because we're seeing them from a different position," Rodriguez explained patiently. "It's like looking at a mountain from the north versus from the south. The mountain looks different, but it's still the same mountain." Dr. Wright had been working on his own calculations. "Based on Rodriguez's measurements and the stellar parallax, I estimate we're about 47 light years from the nearest edge of Zephyrian space." 47 light years? Veltar gasped. "How can you possibly know that from just looking at stars?" "Stellar parallax," Wright explained. "As you move through space, nearby stars appear to shift position relative to more distant stars. By measuring these tiny shifts and comparing them to the movement of your ships, we can calculate distance." Chief Engineer Volkov was examining the Zephyrian propulsion systems on another computer. "Your ships can travel much faster than ours. If Rodriguez is right about the direction, you could be home in less than 2 weeks. But how do you know which direction?" Asked over, Rodriguez walked back to the window and pointed at a specific star. "That star there is listed in your chart says Calder Prime. It's a major navigation marker for your people. If we're seeing it from this angle, at this brightness, then your home systems are—" He turned and pointed in a different direction. "That way." The Zephyrian stared at Rodriguez as if he had just performed magic. "You determined our position and the direction to our home by looking at stars and doing mathematics?" Veltar asked slowly. "Essentially, yes," Rodriguez replied. "It's not as accurate as your quantum systems would be, but it's accurate enough to get you home." Casson shook his head in amazement. "We have traveled to stars for thousands of years, but we had forgotten that it was possible to navigate without quantum computers." Sarah smiled. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. On Earth, we still teach celestial navigation to all our pilots and ship captains. You never know when your computers might fail." Veltar was quiet for several minutes, studying the star charts and Rodriguez's calculations. Finally, she looked up at Sarah. "Captain Chun, I owe you and your crew an apology. I thought your primitive technology meant you could not help us. I was wrong. No apology needed, Commander. Different doesn't mean inferior. Your quantum navigation is amazing when it works. Our methods are simpler but more reliable in situations like this. How can we repay you for this help?" Veltar asked. Sarah thought for a moment. "Actually, there is something. We're explorers just like you. If you could share some of your star charts with us, it would help us explore new regions more safely." "Of course," Veltar agreed immediately. "And Captain, would you be willing to send someone to teach our navigators these ancient techniques? We clearly need backup systems for situations like this." Rodriguez grinned. "I'd be happy to teach them. Navigation is navigation, whether you're crossing an ocean or crossing the galaxy." As the humans prepared to return to their ship, Veltar walked with Sarah to the docking bay. "Captain Chun," the alien commander said, "today you have taught us something important. We became so focused on advancing our technology that we forgot the value of fundamental knowledge. We will not make that mistake again." Sarah nodded. "That's good to hear, Commander. And remember, there's no shame in using simple solutions. Sometimes they work better than complicated ones." As their shuttle flew back to the Wanderlust, Rodriguez looked out at the stars with new appreciation. You know, Captain, those Zephyrians aren't so different from us. They just forgot that sometimes you need to look up at the stars instead of down at your instruments. Sarah smiled. Let's hope they remember that lesson when they get home. The combined fleet of 13 ships moved slowly through the dark region of space. The 12 massive Zephyrian vessels followed behind the much smaller human ship Wanderlust. It was an unusual sight. Advanced alien ships being led by what looked like a tiny metal box in comparison. Captain Sarah Chen stood on her bridge, watching the navigation displays carefully. Lieutenant Rodriguez had spent 3 days working with the Zephyrian navigators, teaching them how to use star positions and mathematical calculations to plot their course. Now they were putting those lessons to the test. How are our escorts doing? Sarah asked. All 12 ships are maintaining formation, reported communications officer. Park. Commander Veltar says her. Crews are amazed at how well the manual navigation is working. Sarah nodded. The journey had started well, but she knew the real test was still ahead. According to the Zephyrian star charts, they would have to pass through a region called the Gravitic Maze, an area filled with gravitational anomalies, left behind by the same quantum storm that had disabled the alien navigation systems. Captain, Dr. Wright called out from his science station. I'm starting to detect the gravitational distortions. They're exactly where the Zephyrian charts said they would be. Sarah walked over to look at his displays. The screen showed swirling patterns of energy that looked like ocean whirlpools made of gravity and space itself. Some of the anomalies were small, but others were massive, big enough to tear apart a ship if they got too close. How bad is it? Sarah asked. Worse than I expected, Wright replied honestly. These gravitational fields are incredibly strong. The Zephyrians' charts show that their usual route through this region requires precise navigation to avoid the dangerous areas. And their quantum navigation systems would normally handle that precision? Exactly. The computers would calculate safe paths through the anomalies automatically. Without those systems, Wright didn't need to finish. Sarah understood. Flying through the Gravitic Maze using only manual navigation would be like threading a needle while blindfolded. Captain, Park announced. Commander Veltar is requesting to speak with you. Put her through. Veltar appeared on the main screen. Even through the alien features, Sarah could see the worry on the commander's face. Captain Chun, our sensors are showing the gravitational anomalies ahead. My engineers say it would be extremely dangerous to proceed without quantum navigation. How dangerous? Sarah asked. The gravitational fields change constantly. A safe path could become deadly in minutes. Our computers normally recalculate the route thousands of times during the journey through this region. Sarah studied the sensor displays showing the maze of gravitational distortions. It looked like a three-dimensional puzzle where all the pieces kept moving. Commander, do your people have detailed sensor data about how these anomalies behave? Yes, our sensors can track the gravitational changes in real time. But without quantum computers to process the data and calculate safe routes. We don't need quantum computers, Sarah interrupted. We need good pilots and quick thinking. Rodriguez, can you work with their sensor data to plot a course? Rodriguez studied the information coming from the Zephyrian ships. It's possible, Captain, but it would require constant course corrections. We'd be flying by instinct as much as instruments. Chief Engineer Volkov spoke up from her station. Captain, the Zephyrian ships are much larger than ours. They might not be able to make the quick turns and adjustments that this kind of navigation requires. Sarah thought for a moment. Commander Veltar, how maneuverable are your ships? Not very, Veltar admitted. They are designed for long-distance travel with quantum-calculated courses. Quick direction changes are difficult. Sarah made her decision. Here's what we're going to do. The Wanderlust will lead the way through the maze. We'll scout ahead and transmit safe coordinates to your ships. You follow our exact path, but stay far enough behind that you have time to react if we encounter problems. Captain Chen, Veltar said, carefully. You are asking your small ship to enter the most dangerous region first. If something goes wrong, then we'll deal with it, Sarah replied simply. That's what we do. The next few hours were the most challenging of Sarah's career. The Wanderlust moved slowly into the gravitic maze, with Rodriguez calling out course corrections every few minutes. The gravitational anomalies were invisible to the naked eye, but the ship's sensors showed them as deadly whirlpools of twisted space. Turn 15 degrees starboard, Rodriguez called out. There's a gravity well forming directly ahead. Pilot Chun Zhao, Sarah's cousin who shared her last name, smoothly adjusted their course. Turning 15 degrees starboard. How's our path looking? Good for now, but there's a strong distortion field coming up in about 10 minutes. We'll need to change course again. Behind them, the Zephyrian fleet followed carefully, staying in the exact path the Wanderlust had taken. The alien ships moved slowly and carefully, their crews unused to this kind of flying. Captain, Dr. Wright announced, I'm seeing something interesting. The gravitational anomalies seem to follow patterns. They're not completely random. What kind of patterns? Sarah asked. It's like weather systems on a planet. The gravitational distortions move in currents and flows. If we can read those patterns? Rodriguez looked up from his navigation display. Right's right. Captain, I think I can predict where the safe channels will be. It's like reading ocean currents. Sarah smiled. Once again, human experience with Earth's natural forces was proving useful in space. Do it. Plot us the best course you can. The journey through the gravitic maze took 12 hours. The human crew worked in shifts, with Rodriguez and the other navigators taking turns reading the gravitational patterns and calling out course changes. The Zephyrians watched in amazement as the tiny human ship danced through the deadly maze with increasing confidence. How do they do it? Kaksan asked Veltar as they watched the Wanderlust avoid another gravity well. Their ship is so small, yet they move through this danger like it's a simple flight path. Experience, Veltar replied thoughtfully. They told me their ancestors learned to read ocean currents and wind patterns to navigate Earth's seas. They're applying those same skills to read gravitational currents, but we have much more advanced sensors than they do. Yes, but we relied on computers to interpret the sensor data. They're interpreting it themselves, with their own minds and instincts. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the combined fleet emerged from the gravitic maze. The stars ahead showed the familiar patterns of Zephyrian space. They were almost home. Captain, Park announced with excitement, I'm receiving signals from Zephyrian vessels. We're in range of their communication networks. Veltar's voice came over the communication system, and for the first time since Sarah had met her, the alien commander sounded truly happy. Captain Chun, I cannot express how grateful we are. You have brought us through impossible danger with skill that our most advanced computers could not match. Sarah looked at her tired but satisfied crew. Rodriguez was grinning as he updated their star charts. Pilot Zhao was flexing her hands after hours of precise flying. Dr. Wright was already making notes about the gravitational patterns they had discovered. Just doing our job, Commander, Sarah replied. Besides, it was a great learning experience for us too. Learning experience? Veltar sounded surprised. You risked your lives to save us, and you call it a learning experience? Sarah smiled. That's how humans see it, Commander. Every challenge is a chance to learn something new. And today we learned that old navigation skills work just as well in gravitational mazes as they do in ocean storms. The fleet continued towards Zephyrian space, with the Wanderlust still leading the way. But now, Instead of following because they were lost, the Zephyrians were following because they wanted to learn more about the remarkable species that had saved them. The great space station orbiting the Zephyrian home world was the most beautiful structure Captain Sarah Chun had ever seen. It was built like a crystal flower with thousands of glowing petals, each one a different section of the massive station. Ships came and went like metal insects around the shining structure. The Wanderlust looked very small as it approached the docking bay. Sarah could see hundreds of Zephyrian vessels nearby, all with the same elegant design as Commander Veltar's exploration fleet. Some of the ships were enormous, bigger than entire human cities. "Captain," Communications Officer Park announced, "we're being given priority docking clearance. The station commander says all of Zephyrian space has heard about what we did." Sarah nodded. Word had spread quickly after they brought the lost fleet home safely. The Zephyrians had sent messages throughout their territory about the small human ship that had saved 3,000 lives using ancient navigation techniques. "Any word from Earth?" Sarah asked. "The Terran Federation Council is very interested in our first contact report," Park replied. "They're sending Ambassador Martinez on the fastest ship they have. He should arrive in about 2 weeks." Sarah walked to the bridge window and looked out at the alien space station. 3 weeks ago, humanity had been alone in this part of the galaxy. Now they were about to become part of something much bigger. "Captain Chun," came a familiar voice over the communication system. "This is Commander Veltar. Welcome to Zephyr Prime Station. I am waiting to escort you to the council chamber." "Thank you, Commander. We're honored to be here." An hour later, Sarah and her senior officers walked through the corridors of the space station. Everything was made of some kind of crystal material that glowed softly with its own light. The corridors were wide and curved, designed for the tall, graceful Zephyrians. Voltar met them at the entrance to a huge chamber filled with hundreds of Zephyrian officials. At the center of the room was a raised platform where 5 elderly Zephyrians sat in ornate chairs. These were clearly the leaders of their civilization. "Captain Chun," Veltar said formally, "I present you to the High Council of the Zephyrian Collective." The eldest of the council members stood up. She was even taller than Veltar, with silver markings on her purple skin that showed her age and status. "I am High Counselor Thyara. Captain Chun, your actions have saved not just 3,000 lives, but one of our most important exploration fleets. The collective is in your debt." Sarah stepped forward and gave a respectful bow. "High Counselor, we were glad to help. Any spacefaring people would have done the same." "I do not think so," Thyara replied. "Most species in this galaxy are cautious about involving themselves in other people's problems. You risked your lives to help strangers without asking for anything in return." Another council member, a male with deep blue markings, spoke up. "We have studied the reports of how you navigated through the gravitic maze. Your techniques are fascinating. We had forgotten that such methods existed." Lieutenant Rodriguez stepped forward slightly. "Counselor, navigation by stellar observation is one of humanity's oldest skills. We're happy to share our knowledge." "And we would like to learn," the counselor replied. "For too long, we have believed that newer technology is always better technology. You have shown us that wisdom can be found in ancient knowledge as well." High Counselor Thyara gestured to a group of younger Zephyrians standing near the platform. "These are our finest navigators and engineers. They wish to study with your people to learn these backup navigation methods." Dr. Wright spoke up. "We'd be honored to teach them. And if possible, we'd love to learn about your quantum navigation systems. Perhaps we could develop hybrid methods that combine the best of both approaches." "An excellent suggestion," Thyara agreed. "But there is a more important matter to discuss. Captain Chun, The Zephyrian Collective would like to formally invite humanity to join the Galactic Consortium. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. The Galactic Consortium was the organization that governed peaceful relations between the major spacefaring civilizations in this part of the galaxy. Joining it would mean that humanity was being recognized as an equal partner among the stars. "Aye, Counselor," Sarah said carefully. "I'm honored by the invitation, but I'm just a ship captain. I don't have the authority to speak for all of humanity." "We understand," Theara replied. "But we wanted to make the offer official. Your Federation Council will be contacted through proper diplomatic channels. However, there is something else." She gestured, and an aide brought forward a beautiful crystal object about the size of Sarah's hand. It pulsed with soft blue light and seemed to contain swirling patterns like a small galaxy. "This is the Order of the Quantum Star," Theara announced. "It is the highest honor the Collective can give to non-Zephyrians. It has only been awarded 3 times in our history. Captain Chun, for your courage, wisdom, and compassion in saving our lost fleet, I present this to you." Sarah accepted the crystal with trembling hands. She could feel the weight of the moment, not just the physical weight of the award, but the significance of what it meant for humanity's future. "Thank you, High Counselor. I accept this honor not just for myself, but for all the crew of the Wanderlust and for humanity as a whole." The entire chamber filled with a harmonic humming sound that Sarah realized was Zephyrian applause. The alien council members rose and bowed deeply, a sign of tremendous respect. After the formal ceremony, Veltar took Sarah and her crew on a tour of the space station. They visited research laboratories where Zephyrian scientists were already working to understand human navigation techniques. They saw engineering workshops where aliens and the few human technical officers were sharing knowledge about different approaches to spaceship design. "Commander," Sarah said as they walked through a garden area filled with plants from different worlds, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, Captain. When we first met, you didn't think much of humanity's technology. What changed your mind?" Veltar was quiet for a moment, watching alien children playing among the strange plants. "You know, Captain, we Zephyrians have always believed that intelligence means building more advanced technology. But you showed us that intelligence can also mean remembering simple truths and applying them in new ways." "How do you mean?" "Your people still remember that stars can guide travelers home. You remember that sometimes the direct approach works better than the complicated one. You remember that helping others is more important than protecting yourself." Veltar turned to look at Sarah. "These are not primitive ideas. They are fundamental wisdom that we had forgotten." Sarah smiled. "Maybe that's what makes contact between different species so valuable. We can each teach the other what we've learned." "Exactly," Veltar agreed. "The Collective has decided to establish a new academy here on the station. We will call it the Institute for Applied Navigation and Crisis Management. We want human instructors to teach backup navigation methods to crews from all member species." "That sounds like a wonderful idea. Will you consider taking command of the Institute, Captain Chun?" Sarah stopped walking. "Me? But I'm just an exploration captain. You are the person who saved our fleet using skills that our advanced civilization had forgotten. You are the one who taught us that simple solutions often work better than complex ones. Who better to lead an institute dedicated to crisis management and practical problem solving?" Sarah looked out through the station's transparent walls at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, Earth was waiting for news of this first contact. Somewhere out there were other species who might need help someday, just like the Zephyrians had needed help. "I'll need to discuss it with my crew and with the Federation Council," Sarah said finally. "Of course. But Captain, I hope you will say yes. The galaxy is a big place, and there are many species who could benefit from human wisdom and human willingness to help others." 3 months later, the Wanderlust returned to Earth, carrying the most important message in human history. The galaxy was not empty, and humanity was no longer alone. But more than that, they had been invited to join a community of species as teachers and problem-solvers. Sarah stood in the Federation Council chambers on Earth, still holding the crystal order of the quantum star. Around her sat the leaders of humanity, listening as she told the story of the lost Zevrian fleet and the rescue that had changed everything. So you see, Sarah concluded, they don't want us to join them as junior partners or as students. They want us as equals, because we have something to offer that their advanced technology cannot replace. And what is that? Asked Council President Singh. Sarah smiled, thinking of Rodriguez teaching alien navigators to read the stars, of Dr. Wright working with Zephyrian scientists to develop new hybrid technologies, of her own crew risking their lives to help strangers in the darkness of space. Hope, she said simply. We offer the hope that comes from never giving up, from believing that every problem has a solution, and from knowing that sometimes the oldest wisdom is the most valuable of all. The Council voted unanimously to accept the invitation to join the Galactic Consortium. Sarah accepted the position as director of the new institute. And somewhere in deep space, the Wanderlust was being refitted for its next mission, not as Earth's only exploration vessel,